you want to scale your Google Ads account to multiple six figures per month profitably, this is the most important video you'll watch this year. I'm Austin Bitsis. I personally managed over 500 million in ad spend for some of the fastest growing direct-to-consumer brands in the world. And today, I'm going to pull back the curtain on how I'm helping brands spend over 200K per month profitably with Google Demand Gen campaign type, one of the biggest growth levers I've seen this year. Here's the truth though. Most videos out there are just basic how-to tutorials straight from Google's help docs. In this video, I'm going to walk you through the real strategies I use to help top brands drive profitable scale from setup to targeting to creative optimizations and attribution. So you can confidently spend more and generate more revenue. So let's get started. And before we dive into the content here, let's set the stage first. What is Demand Gen? Demand Gen is a campaign type in Google Ads built specifically for visual, scrollable, mid-funnel inventory. It runs across three placements or networks: YouTube, Gmail, and Google Discovery. For YouTube, there's in-stream, shorts, YouTube feed. And here's a visual of what those might look like. So you got YouTube shorts, you got YouTube in-stream, you got YouTube feeds, and then you got the Discovery and the Gmail networks. This is an example directly from Google Ads deck. All right, so now let's dive into how Demand Gen differs from Performance Max and why you should care. So to start, now that we know what Demand Gen is, let's talk about how it stacks up against Performance Max, aka Pmax, as you might have heard it, because it can be confusing since they both can leverage Google Merchant Center shopping feeds and both run on YouTube, Discovery, and Gmail. Here's the simplest way to think about it. Pmax harvests demand while Demand Gen creates it. Pmax is your bottom of the funnel workhorse. It gets buyers with high intent, generally on average seeing around 70 to 90% of the Pmax traffic goes to search and shopping placements. It works because people are already looking for your product. Demand Gen is different. It's your mid-funnel amplifier. It puts creative in front of people who aren't searching for it yet, but are likely to care based on their interests, their behaviors, and lookalike signals. With Demand Gen, Google also allows significantly more control over audiences, ad formats, network placements, and creative. So back to why you should care. Because if you're only running Performance Max and or standard shopping and search, you're going to eventually reach a point of category saturation, given search and shopping networks are finite based on search demand for your category, the keywords that you're targeting. Demand Gen is your bridge to reach net new audiences before they hit Google. So to sum it up, if you're trying to grow beyond your warm audience, generate real intent, and test new marketing angles through different creative, Demand Gen is your level, because despite what Google reps are pushing, the truth is most D2C brands shouldn't test this until they have a few boxes checked. And this is where I personally stand. I would not recommend Demand Gen unless you already have a profitable search and shopping strategy, a well-managed Performance Max campaign, and honestly, I would even add that you have a Meta Ads account that's humming. All right, so I have this visual here. Demand Gen is not the first thing you throw out a new account. It's an amplifier, a scale lever, a mid-funnel growth play once your bottom of the funnel is converting and capped out. And here's a visual that I have that basically shows this really nicely. So you capture demand in Pmax via Pmax and search. This is the bottom of the funnel, people that are already searching for what you're looking for within your category, the keywords that you're bidding on. And then once that is mature, that's when you go on to the next step, which is generate new demand within the Google Ads ecosystem. And that's the next step. And then, of course, once you get past that, now you're thinking about more brand marketing, more consideration awareness with video view campaigns and video reach campaigns. That said, here's my take on budget and the estimated time frame you honestly need to test Demand Gen effectively. If you can't commit to at least, let's say, 12 to 30K over a 6-week period, or about 200, maybe 250 to 300 per day minimum, I wouldn't really bother testing Demand Gen. I'm by no means a Google rep, but I've run enough of these to know This campaign needs sufficient data to work. Without enough spend, it never really stabilizes, and you're left guessing whether it's the creative or the audience or the offer that's broken. If that budget is too much right now, I totally get it. You can always soft launch and test it at 100 per day. But honestly, in most cases, you're better off doubling down your resources on either meta ads or testing new creatives in Performance Max, expanding your non-brand search. That said, if your core funnel is dialed in and you're looking for scalable growth, especially as meta ad CPMs keep climbing, demand gen is the very logical next step. All right, so now let's talk about demand gen campaign setup. Let's get into the good stuff. So this is how I actually set up demand gen campaigns for D2C brands that are scaling. If you're looking for a proven copy and paste structure backed by hundreds of thousands in my own demand gen spend, as well as millions across the other top growth marketers that I spoke to before filming this video, this is it. So start with maximum conversions. Simple, effective, really don't overcomplicate it. You can test target TCPA later after you've built some conversion volume, but if you set a TCPA too early, you honestly choke the learning phase and cap your scale. Let Google go broad at first, then tighten it up once you've got enough data. All right, second piece. What conversion goal should you optimize towards? I put purchases with little asterisks because a common misconception is that you should optimize for add to cart or some type of softer conversion goal to help the algorithm learn faster. I've tested both approaches, and here's what I found works. Optimize for purchases from day one. The algorithm is smart enough to find the right users if you feed it the right signal. If you train it on a low intent, softer conversion action, you'll hit your volume thresholds faster, of course, which is the goal of the softer conversion action, but you'll end up attracting lower quality traffic that doesn't convert. I've seen this tank campaigns on both Meta and Google. However, the asterisk is, and my personal exception is, if you're selling a high ticket or high consideration product where purchases are rare, you just don't have enough, usually do because CPAs are higher. And in that case, you can test a custom event goal that blends an upper funnel intent with a purchase signal. So for example, I might make a custom event called add to cart plus purchases. So you're still giving that higher intent, that purchase feedback to the algorithm. I would not recommend just add to cart on its own. All right, now on to budget recommendations. So we already spoke about this a little bit. And here's the reality. If your AOV is in the typical D2C range, say $40 to $150, maybe even $200, here's what I'd recommend. On the conservative end, I would probably start off with that $250 to $300 per day over that 6-week period. And of course, like I said, if you really want to test it and you just don't have those budgets, but all those other items are checked off and you feel confident in your creative, you can start at 100, 150 a day. But this is my recommendation based on your average AOV, most likely predicted CPA, and the amount of conversion data, purchase data that you need to optimize effectively. And plus, if you're at this stage and checked off those buckets, this budget shouldn't be that much of a shock. But on the aggressive end, I work with a lot of brands that want to hit the ground running and have the budget. And we usually start off with between 1,000 and maybe 1,250 per day, maybe even up to 1,500 per day. Again, sure, I've seen some outliers perform well on that 100 to 150 per day budget range, but those brands had either low AOVs, high margins, exceptional creative, and that's just honestly not the norm. The rule of thumb is if you can't confidently spend at least 200 per day, demand gen probably isn't your best next move. All right, so now let's talk about the time frame. I'm going to say hold your line, then optimize. And let me explain that a little bit further. So run the campaign for at least 6 weeks. That's considered like our testing period with no exceptions. And for the first 2 weeks, resist the urge to touch anything. Demand gen takes time to calibrate. You hopefully put your best foot forward so you know that we're getting good data, you're getting clicks and views on good creative. Sometimes it ramps up in 2 weeks. Other times it needs 3 to 4 weeks. But if you start tweaking too early or panic pause in week 1 or 2, you'll muddy the data, lose the ability to diagnose what's really working. So instead, focus on your landing page, your funnel, and your offer, which you can optimize on the back end without touching anything in Google Ads, which I'll break down a little bit later in this video. Let the campaign collect data first. then optimize with intent. All right, so let's talk about the placements. I think a common question is YouTube only or all inventory? This is one of the most common questions I get from brands. Should you run only on the YouTube network or include all placements like Discovery and Gmail? Here's how I'd break it down. If your static ads are crushing it on Meta, why not test all inventory, right? Discovery and Gmail where you can run statics. If you've got strong video creative and want to just dial in YouTube and unlock YouTube as a new channel, then just go for YouTube, just run video. If you're short on creative or not sure what will work yet, start with YouTube only. And I say that because it's a lighter lift than building both video and static creatives. And if you go with YouTube only, don't just pick one format. Include all three. Why not test shorts, in-stream, and in-feed? Let the algorithm figure out where your best engagement is. Restricting formats too early limits your learnings and your scale. All right, let's talk about the Google Merchant Center shopping feed integration. Yes, I would absolutely connect your Google Merchant Center feed to the new demand gen campaign. It won't trigger shopping ads in search if you're concerned about cannibalization there, but it will power product style creative across YouTube Shorts, in-stream, Gmail, and Discovery. In my experience, adding the feed boosts both click-through rates and conversion performance. It gives your ads more visual context and relevance without the extra creative effort. So bottom line is, it's low lift, high impact, and I would highly recommend it. And it helps you learn faster without sabotaging performance by over-optimizing. All right, now let's break down how I structure demand gen ad groups, audiences, and creatives, because this is where most growth marketers either waste budget or get results. All right, so now let's talk about the ad group setup overview. Here's how I start almost every build. I have two ad groups. Ad group 1 is my awareness or prospecting. Ad group 2 is my retargeting ad group, only if you're allowed to use first-party data. If you're in a restricted category, like many of the health brands that I work with, and can't use retargeting audiences due to Google's personalized healthcare advertising policies, it's totally fine. Just focus on your budget, on your awareness ad groups, and test different audiences and creatives within that. Now, if you're running higher budgets, testing multiple product categories, or want to explore different creative angles, you can absolutely break out your ad groups further. For example, a more advanced strategy could be you have 3 ad groups. Each one is a version of your awareness ad group, but ad group 1 has product-focused creative. Ad group 2 has creative centered around your brand story, and ad group 3 has creative centered around your top influencer content. This is a strategy I see a lot of elite D2C growth marketers using. It lets you run clean creative tests while keeping the same audience signals across all 3 ad groups in this example, which is key for reliable performance and data. But here's the nuance. If you're working with a conservative budget, say under $500 per day, keep it consolidated to just one awareness or one ad group, 1 or 2 ad groups to start. If you've got more creative, more budget, or multiple SKU categories, that's when it makes sense to expand and diversify. All right, so on to section 3, let's talk about audience setup. So to start, I would have optimized targeting staying on by default. Even in your retargeting ad group, unless, of course, your lists are large enough to justify turning optimized targeting off. That said, I've been testing this a little bit more lately with turning optimized targeting off, especially with large retargeting pools. I'll share some of this data that I'm seeing in future videos or maybe an X post. All right, so now for your awareness, your prospecting audiences. This will go on your awareness or prospecting ad group. Here's my playbook. Start with your top performing in-market and affinity audiences. You can get these by pulling this data from your audience manager within Google Ads based on your past conversion or your historical data. Layer in custom segments, and here are the 3 custom segments I personally would use. High intent, non-brand keywords, mid-funnel terms, and top competitors. Next, you would add a lookalike or similar segment and build this off your high value customers. So your high LTV customers, your subscribers, something that has higher intent. Of course, if you have enough data. Ideally, I would target around 5,000 plus users. Now for exclusions, exclude past purchasers using either that Klaviyo integration or your Google Ads pixel data. And you could do both. Optionally, for your awareness prospecting ad groups and audience, you could even test excluding site visitors. Now, I would refine that list one step further by your demographic data, your age, your gender, maybe income data. Use the historical data from your Google Ads account to narrow it down to your best converting demographics. Now, for your targeting audience, segment by behavior and relevancy. I would put cart abandoners, product viewers, site visitors, and I would maybe even add in YouTube viewers, either that have been to your YouTube channel or have seen your YouTube ads. Of course, this is not a direct retargeting list like these site visitor audiences, these cart abandoners, product viewers. But if those are not large enough, that can be a great addition. Or you can even test that in another ad group as just retargeting YouTube viewers. And you can even break these out into specific time windows, say same day, 1 to 7 day, 8 to 30 day, if you've got enough of this retargeting volume. Otherwise, just consolidate into a single pool and keep it clean. No additional targeting layers in your retargeting audience signal. And don't forget to exclude past purchasers. Now, hey, growth marketers, if this is the kind of video that has been helpful so far, you're exactly the kind of growth marketer that I want to hear from. So make sure to like, subscribe, and drop a comment below what you would like me to do a deep dive into next. It helps this channel and make sure that you don't miss any of the next upcoming videos. Now, let's get on to creative strategy and creative insights. And this is your biggest lever. So let me be blunt. This is your number one growth lever. And it's where a lot of growth marketers, especially paid search folks, paid search specialists, settle for good enough. But in demand gen, good enough just won't scale efficiently. Demand gen supports video, static, and carousel ads. If you're running YouTube only, well, you can skip static and carousels. But if you're running all inventory, make sure to include at least one of each format. So this is where your scale is going to come from. So make sure to get tight with your creative team. So maybe that looks like starting a new Slack channel just for your demand gen needs, whatever it takes. And to make it easy, I'll drop a link in the description to my demand gen creative spec sheet. You can just send your creative team directly. Here's what it looks like. So you got image aspect ratios, you got pro tips, you got everything you need, resource docs, and I even have an ad tracker, which I'm going to mention in a sec right there. So here are, though, my creative pro tips that actually matter. All right. So 1, theme your creative. Run clear angles like product focused, brand story, UGC, offer led. My second tip would be cover every size. There's landscape, square, vertical, and portrait. And this allows you to get maximum reach over all the different placement opportunities. My tip 3 would be control your test variables. Example would be if you're testing 2 brand story videos, make them as separate ads. In demand gen, compared to let's say a meta ads, you can run up to 5 different videos within a single ad. So if you have 2 different brand story variants, I would maybe have, let's say, 3 to 5 different sizes of each. You got your shorts, you got your horizontal, you got your vertical, your square formats. I would run the 2 different variants as 2 different ads. So in total, that might look like 6 or 8 different videos. That way you can isolate creative performance and not just formatting differences. The 4th tip would be track it all. So I just showed here actually on this slide, let's play this video again, but I'm going to pause it right here. So this is an ad tracker, and you can use this to start off with and modify it for your needs. This way you can track each of the different aspect ratios, when you post this stuff live, what specific ad groups, what's their theme, if there's any influencers, and then use these description names as the names in your actual demand gen campaign. So you could clearly identify what's working and what's not. Allows you to just copy and paste, which including the description below will make your life a lot easier in terms of having some place to start off with your tracking of the different ads and the different formats. All right, so now let's get on to what a good ad looks like. I know what you're thinking. If my brand has a ton of UGC content, should I just run that? Right? You're running a profitable meta ads account and you're running that as a channel with majority UGC content. Please just don't run UGC influencer videos. Some of our best performing videos in demand gen are not UGC. Think product demos, cinematic storytelling, brand stories, or social proof mashups. Run a mix, and you can also test your UGC. Let the data call the shots. All right, so now quick note on Google's recommended A, B, C, D framework. I know it sounds a little obvious, but it's worth mentioning. So I have it outlined right here directly from their demand gen or their YouTube video action deck. And you have A for attention. So hook them early on. B for branding. Show your product or logo early. C for connection. Build some emotion or relatability. D for direction. Tell them exactly what to do next. I don't follow this religiously, but when creative hits at least 2 or 3 of these, it usually performs better. However, this is a little too vague in my opinion. I didn't want to share it, but here's how I would actually do it better. Your first 3 seconds determines at least 80% of your ad's performance. I would even argue more than 80%, 90, 95%. Every great ad has a re-engagement moment at the 3-second mark. That's when the X factor is revealed, whether that's a beat drop, hard zoom, a surprising visual, a benefit punchline, a pattern interrupt. It rehooks the viewer just when they're about to scroll away. And that's honestly the move. You'll have to remember demand gen is not a search or shopping ad. People are not looking for your ads. They're mid-scroll or mid-video trying to get to the content or their entertainment or their education, whatever they're doing on YouTube. And then for creative inspiration, use Google's Transparency Center and their YouTube ads leaderboard. So I actually have what it looks like right here. And just make sure when you're looking for objective that we're concerned about action. So, and you can look at in-stream, you can look at shorts, and you can just see what other advertisers are running. Of course, this might not be the best for your category. Spend some time on YouTube, see what's working, but both are still great for spotting trends, top performing creatives. And I'll link both of these in the show notes below. Also, if your creative team's a bottleneck, which in many kind of cases, in many brands, that can be the case. Maybe they're focused on meta ads and maybe the turnover is not as quick as you would like. Your Google rep can connect you with a Google creative team. They'll help you resize or trim your assets. That's pretty much the extent of what they can do. But just as long as you give them clear creative brief, they're not perfect, but they're definitely helpful. So now let's continue with some last creative tips. Specific tips for static ads now. Test them with and without text overlay. Sometimes simpler images outperform. Sometimes the text overlay outperforms. So tip 2 would be repurpose meta ads statics if needed, but always test for YouTube specific performance. Now, step 3 would be use a mix of product focused and lifestyle imagery and try to test both. So tip 4 would be prioritize high resolution images. Blurry or overly compressed assets honestly get ignored. So if you're just pulling them off your website, sometimes that's fine, but honestly try for high resolution images because Google will flag you for that. Tip 5 would be make sure your images feel native to Discovery, Gmail, and Shorts. And now step 6 would be include clear branding or logo. Even on the statics, early brand cues can help drive recall. All right, so now let's dive into specific tips for video ads. Tip 1, which we already discussed, is hook fast. You've got 2 to 4 seconds to earn that attention. Tip 2 would be show the product early, especially if it's your hero SKU. Tip 3 would be test subtitles or captions. As a growth marketer, you should be testing everything. Let the data determine your optimizations. Most people watch muted, especially on mobile. Keep it snappy. 15 to 60 seconds works best for most formats. Test both UGC style and polished brand assets. Some of the best performing creative is a mix between the two. So we already mentioned, don't just use the UGC. Try non-UGC style videos. Tip 7 would be format matters. Use horizontal for in-stream and in-feed. Use vertical for shorts and repurpose wisely, but respect each placement. Make sure it looks good in each format. All right, specific tips for retargeting audiences. So I put this note here. Start simple. Repurpose your best performing awareness creative, especially if you're limited on bandwidth and you want to go a little bit deeper. Build dedicated retargeting assets. And those assets might be focused on urgency or offer for like time sensitive offers, or maybe heavy hitting social proof. These types of ads tend to convert better in lower funnel audiences. I just want to go into the 4th type of creative, or I call it the 4th type of creative. So this is whitelisted YouTube ads. Think of this like Spark ads for YouTube. If you worked with influencers on any long form YouTube content, so maybe they made a dedicated video for you or had paid placements inside of their video, you can turn those into ads. And here's how. Paste the YouTube URL just like you would add any video ad to demand gen. So step 2 would be crop that exact section that you want. So maybe you want to run the whole video. That's fine. You should probably test that. But maybe you just want to run one little section. Maybe that CTA. Maybe they were just running a paid placement within their video and you just want to crop that minute and 30 seconds out. Step 3 would be you can even host it on your own channel. So you can actually crop the ad within Google Ads. You could crop like different formats, different sizes. It's honestly a big time saver. The step 4 would be match the format to the placement. This is important. So sometimes, let's say you have a horizontal video, you have like a long form piece of content that an influencer did for you or that ad placement. When you crop it, it just doesn't look right. And you don't have the raw video in most cases to have your creative team or Google creative team to resize. So I would then select the specific ad format for horizontal videos as in-stream and in-feed. And for verticals, like if you've got a vertical video and it just doesn't look right in horizontal, maybe it does, you just have to kind of look at it. Then I would just select shorts as the format. The bonus tip would be these whitelisted video ads often get crazy view-through rates. They honestly perform really well. And because people recognize the creators and trust the content. So instead of just repurposing Meta Ads UGC content and influencers, work directly with YouTube native creators. Have them shoot specifically for YouTube. It performs honestly way better. Okay, so let's recap the creative setup with an example. So we might have ad group 1, which is our product-focused ad group theme. And now within that ad group, we have 4 ads. We have a static ad, we have another static ad, we have a video ad, and we have a carousel ad. Between the 2 static ads that we have, we're testing one with text overlay across the 4 different sizes. So we have landscape, square, portrait, and vertical. And across that, we might have 16 different image assets. We're allowed up to 20. Static 2 would be a similar ad, like it's themed around a particular theme, but we don't use those text overlays. So again, we have 16 images. Ad number 3 would be that video. That's the product-focused video. And we have 4 different sizes. We have vertical, square, and horizontal, and that kind of portrait view. And then we have a carousel image with at least 5 product images across. Ad group 2 could be our brand story. And now with our brand story, maybe we just have 2 videos. And we explained this earlier in this video, but we have the 2 different angles as 2 different ads. So we might have one with an angle that has one hook, and then we want to test another hook with a different ad. So the meat and bones of the actual video might be the same, but maybe we're testing different hook. Or maybe there's a short version versus a long format. And we have those 2 ads across those 4 different sizes each. So in total, there's 8 videos split between 2 ads. Now, ad group 3, so this is your UGC or your top influencer content. And in this ad group, we might have our creator 1 video. So we have 1 influencer video. We have maybe another influencer video. And then we have, so our 3rd ad might be a whitelisted YouTube video cropped and formatted per placement. So honestly, this might feel like a lot, but this is the level of structure that gets results. The more intentional you are with your creative themes, your format testing, your ad group separation, the easier it will to diagnose what's working and scale fast without the guesswork. Now let's get into section 5, which is attribution and measurement. And now this is the nuance that no one tells you. Okay, so let's talk about attribution and how to actually measure demand gen. This is where things get fuzzy and where most growth marketers put too much emphasis on the wrong or incomplete data. If you own or operate a D2C brand, your main KPI is probably CAC or MER. And while Google Ads throws a wall of metrics at you, those numbers alone won't tell you the true story and incrementality of a particular channel like demand gen. You need to layer in external data sources to understand demand gen's incrementality, their incremental lift, and how it actually is supporting your full growth engine. All right, so let's talk about what to watch in platform. By in platform, I mean in the Google Ads UI. So once your campaign is live, these are the key metrics I would recommend focusing on. So the first one would be CTR and CPMs. Is your creative getting attention and at a scalable cost? So this is the first metrics that we can look at. Metric 2 would be conversions, of course. So track both click-through and view-through conversions. You could also track conversions on your full funnel. So are people adding to cart? Are people getting to checkout? How are they moving through that funnel? So not just purchase conversions, especially early on. Step 3 would be your average watch time. So for video, this shows creative quality and audience fit. So this is something that I love to kind of compare different assets, different creative assets are on, is average watch time. And make sure you look at that between each of the different ad formats, because of course, shorts are going to have a lower average watch time than in-stream or in-feed, or in most cases. Metric 4 is CPA, not just for purchases. Similar to conversions, monitor add to cart CPA as an early funnel signal. So a pro tip would be segment your columns in the UI for performance by format. This is your shorts, your in-stream, your discovery, and your Gmail. So Google doesn't make it very easy to look at discovery and Gmail, but what you could do is you have your columns in Google Ads and you click segment, and then you go to the bottom of that drop down and click add format. And now you should see, you can have your data split out by shorts, in-stream, and in-feed. And this gives you really valuable data of which formats are actually performing. So you'll often spot clear performance differences that reveal how creative and placements are interacting. Another helpful metric I look at in platform is assisted conversions. So in platform, in the Google Ads UI, go to goals, go to attribution, assisted conversions, and there's a column called assist per last click conversion. And if that number, assist per last click conversions, is above 1, what that means is your campaign is influencing people earlier in the funnel who are converting later, often through search or your branded search campaign, maybe your branded shopping campaign. In my best demand gen campaigns, I generally see an assist ratio between 1.5 and 2.75. That tells me it's not just converting, it's feeding the full journey. So this is a metric that I always look at and I continue to monitor. If it's under 1, that tells me I need to hold the campaign to stricter click-through metrics, or on the flip side, it means I need to prioritize validating the impact through other methods like MMM or holdout tests before scaling further. We'll talk about this in a sec. Now, let's move away from platform metrics. Let's go on to the next section. How do you read demand gen in your multi-touch attribution tools, your MTA tools? Now, demand gen really gets credit or full credit in click-through attribution platforms like MTA, but here's how to make the most of what you have. So if you use Rockerbox, which I'm very familiar with, it includes a one-day view-through rate on most digital platforms, which is helpful. It also includes post-purchase and promo code data. If you have Northbeam, which many of you guys might be using Northbeam MTA tool, there's click-through, like one-day click, 7-day click. There's different views you could look at it, but look at the click plus view model to get a better read of how demand gen is working, because specifically YouTube, even Discovery and Gmail is heavily view through. So make sure to have that view through model on. And with Triple Whale, do the same. Very similar to Northbeam, very similar to Rockerbox. So the next thing to look at is using your post-purchase surveys, which is a simple but powerful tool. So I mentioned Rockerbox pulls this in. I think you can get this in Northbeam as well. Maybe you use Fairing or another tool for post-purchase surveys. So think about it as like somebody purchases. How did you hear about us? On your thank you page. Tag responses that say YouTube. This is one of the few clean signals you'll get in a view through heavy channel. You can also use promo codes tied to your demand gen campaigns as another unique tracking layer. Now, once you're spending at scale or even ramping up towards, let's say, 1,000 per day, Google Lift Studies can be a really valuable tool. Google Lift Studies are absolutely worth considering. These studies require zero extra lift from you, and they run in the background. And you can validate whether your campaign is driving true incremental impact. Here's a quick breakdown of what each does. So the first one I want to mention is search lift study. So this measures if your ads drive more people to your particular brand. Similar to that is your brand lift study. Now, this runs YouTube surveys to measure ad recall, awareness, and intent for your brand. The lift study is conversion lift study. It compares exposed versus unexposed groups to prove the causal lift of your demand gen campaign. Now, the fourth is one of my favorites. It's the geo lift study, and it compares performance between regions running ads versus your holdout regions. Study 5 is the causal lift impact analysis, similar to the conversion lift study, but slightly different. It's a statistical approach using time series data to estimate what would have happened without your ads, especially useful when you can't run clear geo split tests or holdout tests. So are they perfect? No. Google is grading their own homework in some cases, but yes, if you run one and you don't see a lift, that's of course a red flag. If you do see a lift and it aligns with what you're seeing in platform, in GA4, on your MTA models, in your surveys, in your promo code attribution, that's a green light to continue to scale with some more confidence. Now, the bonus attribution tip is to use incrementality tools. If you're lucky enough to work with an MMM tool like a Recast or a Prescient AI, this is where they really shine. So MMM, or marketing mixed modeling, pulls in historical data across all channels, seasonality, spend levels, and more to estimate how much true lift each channel is driving. It's not real time, but it's great for validating the view through numbers you're seeing in platform or in tools like Northbeam or Rockerbox. I would add one more to this. Same goes for holdout testing platforms like House, which are basically the gold standard for proving incrementality. With House, you can set up controlled experiments where certain user groups or regions don't see your ads at all. And then you measure the actual impact based on conversion delta. If you're spending at scale and want causal proof before scaling harder, tools like these are game changers. I'm not affiliated with any of these, by the way, at the time of recording this. This is just from my own experience of what I've used to help attribute and give a fuller picture, not only in demand gen, but other growth marketing channels, especially view through channels, which are, to recap, your attribution stack should layer platform data, MTA tools, surveys, promo codes, and ideally lift studies or holdout test and or an MMM tool. Of course, you have the resources to get them. The more signal you layer, the clearer your picture gets and the more confident you can scale. Now, in the final section, section 6, I want to talk about how do you optimize your demand gen campaign. 2 weeks or so in, and we're seeing data come through and we want to optimize with intent. So what do we do? Optimization tip number 1, don't be reactive. Let it breathe. One of the biggest mistakes I see growth marketers make is judging demand gen like search. That just won't work here. Post-click and view-through conversion latency is longer, especially with YouTube. Someone sees your shorts ads and they don't click, but they Google your brand 4 days later and then convert via search. So if you see the algo shifting spend, like pumping more spend into YouTube Shorts, but let's just say like your in-stream ads have a lower CPA, just don't panic. My rule of thumb is wait at least 5 to 7 days before evaluating shifts like this. And ideally make decisions on that 12 to 14 day mark with enough data. More often than not, algorithm is right. And I've been happily surprised by delayed latency or post view through latency in terms of conversions showing up in attribution tools later on. Tip 2 would be my creative rotation strategy. So once you've given enough time, go ahead and cut losing creative that has gotten its fair chance or spending but not driving conversions or at unprofitable CPA. I usually pause the entire ad if performance is weak across all placements, but sometimes I'll relaunch that same creative and only serve it on in-stream or shorts, right? Where it performed best. Small tweaks can make a big difference. Make sure to not totally pause out everything all at once, which will of course reset your campaign learning. Now, another thing to note is Google won't evenly rotate your creative. Algo will often or quickly start favoring a single or few creatives, even if it's not the best performer. To fix this, manually rotating in new creatives every 2 to 3 weeks. I mean, of course, that time is totally arbitrary, like depending on how much you're spending, what you're converting, how much creative that you actually have, how it's performing. Yeah, just a rule of thumb. Maybe it's 2 to 3 weeks, maybe it's a month, maybe it's every 6 weeks, maybe it's every week. All right. To fix this, step 2 would be create a new ad group that split your creative format or theme to force spend and distribution. Tip 3 would be patient and give the algo the benefit of the doubt. In the creative that is getting majority of your campaign budget might actually be converting when considering post-click or post-view through latency, as we were kind of discussing. So the last pro tip for creative testing is off of this creative rotation strategy. So now you have 2 types of media buyers or 2 types of growth marketers, right? You have an amateur media buyer that sees one ad performing above average and decides, okay, that ad did okay, but let's start from scratch and create a new concept. Now they have to wait 2 to 3 weeks for the new creative to be created by the creative team, the big lift. And this is the totally wrong way to go about it. This results in wasted time, lost momentum, and really wasted potential, right? Now you get the pro growth marketer, the pro media buyer. And now it finds a promising concept. So the same scenario as the amateur media buyer, but now it duplicates it into 5 different ad formats. And it only changes the first 2 to 3, maybe 4 seconds, the hook of the video. This results in 5 new versions in maybe only a day or two, right? Because they're not changing the meat and the bones of the actual video, right? CTA, the body that they know is effective. They're changing the hook, right? And now what happens is 1 or 2 of those ads, of those 5 ads, absolutely crush it. Maybe 1 underperforms and 1 just does okay. But what happens is they just 3 times their likelihood of getting a winning ad. So it was the same CTA, the same messaging, and just a different hook. All right, so one other thing that I want to talk about is in terms of optimization would be the third thing. So analyze your audience performance. Look at which audience signals are spending the most and which are converting the least. If you see a segment burning spend with no return, then pause it. If one custom segment is eating majority of the spend, try breaking it out into its own ad group for more spend, right? For example, if you have a retargeting or a lookalike audience that is performing very well but not getting enough spend, try breaking that out into maybe its own ad group. See if you can get spend where one of the audiences is kind of taking over majority. Kind of the same thing goes with creative, right? One creative is taking majority of the spend, the other ones are not, and you don't feel confident in pausing them. You just haven't seen that it got enough data. Maybe split it into its own ad group. Also try testing, adding in new audiences by adding it to your existing audience signal. Let's go into the fourth optimization tip that I would put would be evaluate ad format distribution. So check where your spend is going by format, shorts, in-stream, in-feed. Sometimes 80% of your budget will shift to one of these formats. It's not always a bad thing, but what matters is whether the format is performing. If it's not, consider rebalancing by trimming inventory or re-uploading creative tailored to that specific format that is performing. Here are my elite level optimizations for demand gen. Let's talk about some more advanced strategies in terms of optimizing demand gen. So my more advanced strategy would be placement exclusions. Demand gen doesn't give full placement transparency like display, but you can still exclude certain YouTube channels, content categories, and topics. Exclude low quality or irrelevant YouTube channels like kids content, music videos, just stuff that you know is lower quality or just low quality for your particular brand or category. Now, my advanced kind of optimization strategy number 2 would be run a custom experiment. If you have enough volume, if you're spending, let's say $1,000 per day, start using campaign experiments to A/B test. So you can test things like creative formats, let's say static versus video, if you're not sure about different placements. Number 2, you could do placement mixes. So you could do YouTube only versus all placements. Number 3 would be audience signals. So you can do broad or lookalike versus kind of more granular interest stacks. Run these as a 50-50 split test for, I would say, at least a month and actually get a signal and not guesswork. All right, so tip 3 would be schedule by performance window. So if your account has a strong hourly conversion patterns, you can use ad scheduling to limit wasted impressions during non-buying hours, especially for in-stream or in-feed. But the pro tip would be check hour of day or day of week performance in Google Ads and GA4 before applying this. However, I'll be real with you. I only do this in very, very rare cases. Usually when I use this is when brands see a significant dip in performance on weekends and internally have this decision to pull back media on weekends, which has been supported through their testing. I'll let the algorithm do this themselves. Forcing it can actually hurt performance, but just know it is a lever that you can pull. Yeah, let's go into creative watch optimizations now. Go into your video, add metrics, and analyze average watch time per impression. So I would kill anything that has low watch time, let's say under 5 seconds, under 3 seconds on, let's say, like your 15 to 30 second ad. It's a sign it's skippable past the hook. However, make sure you're comparing shorts, in-stream, and in-feed. There are endless ways to optimize creative. Make sure to consider not just the aggregate ad, but also looking under assets. Consider each asset by this. I mean, you can see headlines, how they're performing, your descriptions, each video, each image, if you're running static ads, and optimize this way once you have enough data. Advanced tip number 5 is test different landing pages, which is a huge unlock. Most media buyers obsess over the creative, but ignores what happens after the click. In demand gen, especially with mid-funnel traffic, the landing page experience matters a lot. So try testing this. So one would be product detail pages versus pre-sales, advertorials, quizzes, listicles that are more educational. Tip 2 would be a dedicated UGC style page that matches the creative that you're running. The third thing that I would mention is pages with softer CTAs like email capture. If your product is of high AOV or high consideration, can also work. I would say the pro tip here is match the creative angle with the page. If you're running a story-driven video ad, don't dump users into any old PDP. Track performance, not just by conversion, but by what happens before the purchase. Now, things to look at here would be bounce rate, time on page, scroll depth, CTA, button click-through rate, add to cart, click-through rate, your conversion rate to your click to purchase. And the last advanced optimization I'll leave you with is adjust your frequency caps via a tool like DV360. So DV360, or Display and Video 360, is Google's advanced media buying platform. With DV360 in particular, you're able to control frequency caps across placements like YouTube. Now, my final thought is don't micromanage early on, but don't go on autopilot either. Demand gen rewards smart iteration, so learn fast, act slow. Now, we covered a lot, so let's wrap this up. And that's honestly my full playbook for running and scaling demand gen campaigns. I'm always learning, I'm always testing, so I'll have more things to share in the future. And if you have any questions, let me know. But this is from setup to attribution to your creative and your optimizations. If you made it this far, I definitely want to thank you. Also ask you to drop a comment and let me know if you're testing demand gen or want me to cover any other growth marketing topics in a future video. I also ask you to subscribe if you want more deep dive tactical breakdowns like this. Subscribe so you don't miss a video. And if you're a D2C brand spending around that 50K plus per month mark in ad spend and need help scaling, feel free to DM me. I'll have the link in the description below how to get in touch with me. I consult and manage ads for some of the top brands in the space. And thanks again for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.